My parents demanded I pay for my brother's wedding. When I said no, they called me a disgrace and tried to kick me out of the house I own. But then I revealed a secret that left them speechless. Hi Reddit. I'm Ava, 34F, and I've debated posting this for a while because every time I try to write it, I get so worked up I end up closing my laptop. But the events that unfolded recently have been so absurd, I think I need to let it all out. Plus, I know this community will understand the kind of entitled nonsense I've been dealing with. To really get what's happening now, I need to rewind a little, maybe more than a little. I promise it'll be worth it. So, I'm the older of two. My younger brother, Miles, 31, has always been the golden child, or at least, that's how my parents, Diane and Victor, have always treated him. He was the boy of the house, the future man, the one who couldn't do wrong even when he very clearly did. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one. That's what they'd say when they wanted me to pick Miles up from school, do his laundry, or cover for him when he flunked a test. You're so mature. Ava, you understand things better. Translation: we're going to dump all our problems on you and hope you don't complain. I moved out when I was 22, the minute I graduated. I worked full-time while studying, scraped together enough for a tiny rental, and just left. No drama. No big goodbye. I didn't even tell them I was going until the day of. That's how stifling it had gotten. They barely reacted. My mom cried, but it felt more like guilt tripping than genuine sadness. My dad just said, "Don't come running back when it gets hard." Spoiler: I didn't. The next decade of my life was a blur of hustling, saving, and very little sleep. I built a career in real estate, not glamorous at first, but I stuck with it. And eventually, I got good at it. I flipped my first house at 27. At 30, I bought the place I live in now, a cozy but elegant 3-bedroom that I fully renovated myself. But here's the thing. I made a decision early on. I never told my parents how well I was doing. Not because I wanted to be petty, but because I knew exactly what would happen if I did. They'd suddenly remember I existed, not as a daughter, but as a resource. And boy, was I right. They didn't really keep in touch outside of birthdays and the occasional holiday. I was the one who'd send texts, keep conversations going, offer help with tech or finances when they needed it. It wasn't until last year, when I posted a picture of my house, just the backyard, mind you, on Facebook, that things started to shift. My mom called me 5 minutes later. Not even kidding. 5 minutes. "Oh, Ava, we didn't realize you were doing so well. That patio looks gorgeous. You must be making good money, huh?" I gave the safest answer I could. "I'm doing all right." That conversation spiraled into what I now recognize as the start of their long con. At the time, I just thought they were being unusually nice, checking in more often, complimenting me more than usual, even asking if they could come visit sometime. I wasn't naive. I saw the shift. But I figured, fine. Let them try. I've got boundaries now. They can't pull the same old tricks. Then 2 months ago, they invited me over for dinner. Just a nice family night, they said. I almost didn't go, but something in my gut told me I should. Miles was there too, along with his fiancée, Camille. She's fine. A little stuck up, kind of entitled, but we've never had beef. We're not close, but we're civil. Everything was going fine, until my dad clinked his glass and cleared his throat. I knew that sound. It was the same tone he'd use when he was about to announce something and expected praise or approval. "We're so excited to let you know," he began, smiling at Miles and Camille, "that the wedding is finally happening this fall." There were congratulations, hugs, the usual small talk. I smiled politely, raised my glass, and thought that would be the end of it. But no. My mom turned to me, hand on my arm, and said, "Ava, we know you've had a lot of success lately, and we're so proud of you. We thought it would be wonderful if you contributed something meaningful to the wedding. Like the venue." I blinked. "The venue?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Yes," she said, beaming. "We've been looking at this lovely estate just outside of town. It's about $12,000 to book for the weekend, but it includes catering and decorations, so it's actually very reasonable." I laughed. I didn't mean to. It just slipped out. I honestly thought they were joking, but they weren't. My dad's smile disappeared. It's not a joke, Ava, he said sharply. You make good money. You can afford it. I set my glass down and tried to gather my thoughts. Why would I pay for Miles's wedding? I asked. Did you ask him to cover anything? There was a silence. Camille looked uncomfortable. Miles shifted in his seat but didn't say anything. My mom jumped in. Miles is going through a lot right now with work, and you know weddings are expensive. We just thought, since you don't have a family of your own and you're doing well financially, it would be a beautiful gesture. There it was. That old line again, since you don't have a family of your own. I took a deep breath and said, no, just that. Simple. Firm. My dad's face went red. My mom looked like I just slapped her. Miles still said nothing. No, my dad repeated, leaning forward. I'm not paying for their wedding. It's not my responsibility. You're being selfish, my mom snapped. We have always supported you, and this is how you repay us? That's when I laughed again. But this time, it wasn't from disbelief. It was from rage. Because what they didn't know, what they had never bothered to ask, was that the house they so sweetly complimented, the one they now think they can walk into and throw me out of, is hiding a secret. A secret that was about to change everything. And that's when I stood up, slowly, and said, you know what? Let's take a little walk. My mom blinked. What are you talking about? To my car, I replied, keeping my voice calm. I want to show you something. My dad gave me a suspicious look, but stood up anyway. Miles and Camille exchanged glances. She looked like she wanted to say something but thought better of it. We all headed out to the driveway, the air heavy with confusion and tension. I could feel my heart pounding not from nerves, but from the years of resentment bubbling just beneath the surface. I'd spent a lifetime swallowing their words, their dismissals, their quiet expectations that I'd always come second. But tonight, something had shifted in me. I was done playing the quiet, mature daughter who took the high road. I unlocked the glove compartment in my car, pulled out a folder, and handed it to my dad. He took it hesitantly, flipped it open, and frowned. What is this? He asked. I leaned against the car, arms crossed. It's the deed to the house. My mom stepped closer, squinting at the papers. Why are you showing us this? Because, I said slowly, it's not just a house I live in. It's my house. I didn't rent it. I didn't get lucky with some handout. I bought it. Every inch of that place, every nail in the walls, every tile I laid in the kitchen, I paid for it. I earned it. And just so we're clear, no one, not you, not Miles, not anyone else, has a right to it. Or to my money. I expected silence. But of course, my dad couldn't let it go. You don't need to throw your success in our faces, Ava. We raised you. You wouldn't even be here without us. I laughed again, but this time it was quieter. Sadder. Raised me? You raised me to be useful. You raised me to cover for Miles. You raised me to put myself second so he could shine. And now that I've got something for myself, you think you're entitled to it. Camille, to her credit, looked more and more horrified with every word. She tried to nudge Miles, maybe hoping he'd step in. But he just stood there, arms folded, avoiding my eyes. I can't believe this, my mom said, shaking her head. We're your family, Ava. We've always been here for you. You've been here when you wanted something, I snapped, my voice sharper now. Not when I needed support. Not when I was working night shifts to pay for college. Not when I had no heat in the winter, and you told me to tough it out instead of helping me. But now that I have something worth taking, suddenly we're a family again. The silence after that was thick. Nobody spoke. Even the street felt quieter. Finally, Miles broke it. You know, you don't have to be so dramatic. We just thought you'd want to help. I turned to him, and for the first time, I let the disgust show on my face. No, Miles. You expected me to help, because that's what I've always done. Covered for you. Paid for you. Let you skate through life while I worked for every inch. Well, not this time. He scoffed. It's just a wedding, Ava. Exactly. Just a wedding. So why don't you pay for it? He opened his mouth, then shut it again. My mom looked furious now. Her hands were clenched, jaw tight. You really think you're better than us now, don't you? No, I said. I think I finally stopped pretending I wasn't. That's when my dad said something I never expected to hear. Well, then maybe you shouldn't be living in our neighborhood if you're so above us. I blinked. Excuse me. You heard me, he said, crossing his arms. This area was always meant for families. Not, well, people who don't even appreciate theirs. That hit me in a way I didn't expect. Not because it hurt, but because it confirmed something I'd suspected for a while now. They didn't just want money from me. They were jealous. Jealous that I had made something of myself. Jealous that I'd gotten out. Jealous that they couldn't control me anymore. I stared at him for a long time. Then I smiled calmly, even though my blood was boiling. You know, I said, it's funny you mentioned that. And that's when I dropped the second bombshell. The deed? Look at the back page. My dad hesitated, then flipped it over. His face paled. He passed the paper to my mom, who looked just as confused. Her mouth opened, then closed. Miles squinted over her shoulder. What's this about a trust? My mom asked slowly. I said, it's about the trust fund. The one I set up when I bought this house. The one I've been contributing to for the past 6 years. It's not just for me anymore. It's for you, or at least for your future. There was a pause, like everyone was trying to piece together the words I just said. My dad blinked a couple of times. What do you mean? Why would you put money in a trust for us? Because, for all your faults, I'm not completely heartless. I knew that one day, when I wasn't around, you might need some support, like, let's say, when your retirement funds dry up or when Miles needs help getting out of another mess. So, I set it up. You can access it in about 2 years, but there are conditions. Conditions? My mom was still processing, her voice almost shaking. What kind of conditions? Simple ones, I said. You have to show that you've been financially responsible for the last 5 years. Which means no spending on unnecessary things, no asking for handouts, and definitely no trying to manipulate me into paying for your son's wedding when you've never even acknowledged the sacrifices I made. My dad stood up straight, the paper still in his hands. You can't do that. This is our money, Ava. I shook my head. No, it's not. This is the money I earned, and I put it away for you. For when you're ready to accept help on my terms. I could have kept it all for myself, but I didn't. The silence stretched longer now, and I could feel the weight of it pressing down on all of us. My dad was still staring at the paper, the reality of it sinking in. Why didn't you tell us about this? My mom finally said, her voice quieter now, not angry, but uncertain. Why would you keep something like this a secret? Because, I replied, every time I tried to have an honest conversation with you, you treated me like I was an inconvenience. You only reached out when you needed something. So I figured I'd set it up quietly, no strings attached, just in case. And frankly, I didn't want you to start depending on me again. My mom's face flushed red. She took a deep breath, trying to hold herself together, but it was obvious she was losing the battle. You think we've been using you? She asked, her voice breaking slightly. I think you've been expecting me to bail you out whenever you needed it, I corrected. But it stops here. No more. Miles shifted uncomfortably behind us, still looking at the trust documents like they were some sort of alien artifact. Camille's eyes darted back and forth between the three of us, her expression unreadable. Well, I think this is a bit extreme, don't you? Miles finally spoke up. I mean, we're family. I didn't ask you to pay for my wedding. I just thought you might be willing to help out. That's all. I looked at him, feeling a tightness in my chest. The truth is, I'd spent so many years taking care of him, covering for him, picking up the pieces of his messes, and now, I realized, I was done. He had never taken responsibility for his own life, his own choices, and I wasn't going to let him use me as a safety net any longer. No, Miles, I said, keeping my voice calm. You never asked, but you've never had to ask. You've always just assumed that I'd be there to pick up the pieces, and I'm not doing it anymore. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog. The atmosphere in the driveway was suffocating now, uncomfortably thick with tension, regret, and the realization that something had shifted in me that couldn't be undone. What now? My mom finally broke the silence, her voice small. Now, you figure it out, I said. You've been living under the assumption that I owe you something because I'm your daughter, but I don't. And I'm not going to carry that burden anymore. I took a step back, feeling the cool breeze against my face. It almost felt like a weight was lifting off my shoulders, finally putting the pieces of my life in place. But I'll give you something, I said, turning back to face them one last time. I'll leave the trust as it is, but only if you prove to me, to all of us, that you can make your own way without asking for help. That means no more expectations, no more manipulation. If you want to access what's there, you have to show you can stand on your own 2 feet. My dad stared at me, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief. You're going to hold that over our heads? He asked, his voice strained. No, I said, shaking my head. I'm giving you a chance. A real chance to make your own choices, your own future. I'm not going to bail you out anymore, but I'm not going to leave you high and dry, either. The ball's in your court. There was a long pause as everyone processed what I just said. I felt a mix of emotions, relief, anger, frustration, but above all, I felt free. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the weight of their expectations or the guilt of being their backup plan. The game had changed. Finally, my dad spoke again, his voice barely a whisper. So, you're just walking away? After everything? I looked at him, steady, unflinching. I'm not walking away. I'm just taking control of my own life. And then I turned and walked back to the house, leaving them standing in the driveway. I wasn't sure what would happen next. Would they try to get back at me? Would they accept the terms? I didn't know. But I knew one thing. I was no longer the person they thought they could manipulate. And that felt, well, it felt like a victory. I stepped into the house, leaving my parents and Miles behind in the driveway, and closed the door behind me with a soft click. It was almost too quiet inside, as though the silence was trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. I stood there for a minute, collecting my thoughts, trying to steady my breath. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. It was just beginning. The next few days were tense, to say the least. I went about my usual routine, but something felt different. Like the calm before a storm. I didn't hear from my parents right away, but I could feel their anger simmering just below the surface. I could sense it every time I passed them in the kitchen or in the hallway. They were seething, but they were also calculating. I knew they'd try to find a way to turn the situation to their favor, to make me feel guilty for standing up for myself. And then, 2 days after the confrontation, the phone rang. It was my mom. Ava, we need to talk, she said, her voice sweet but with an edge to it that made my skin crawl. I think we've talked enough, I replied, keeping my tone even, my heart still pounding in my chest. No, honey, you're not understanding the full picture, she continued, her voice now laced with false concern. We've been worried about you. We know you've been under a lot of stress lately with work, and now with everything going on with Miles' wedding. You're pushing us away, and that's not healthy. I almost laughed at the audacity, but I kept it in check. I'm not pushing anyone away. I'm setting boundaries. Something that you and Dad never allowed me to do growing up. There was a long pause, and I could hear her breathing over the line, as though she was trying to collect herself. Ava, you're being unreasonable. You're throwing your own family away for money. What kind of daughter does that? The guilt trip ankle. Classic. I'm not throwing anyone away. I'm just refusing to keep giving when I've already given so much, and you and Dad have never appreciated it, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. You don't get to manipulate me anymore, Mom. Manipulate you? She asked, her voice rising, feigning innocence. You think we've been manipulating you? You think we've been using you? That's a terrible thing to say, Ava. I could practically see her fake tears welling up. She had perfected the art of playing the victim. Yes, that's exactly what I think. I shot back. You've been using me for years, making me feel like I owe you for things I didn't ask for. And every time I stood up for myself, you made me feel guilty for it. But not anymore. Ava, she sighed, as though she was talking to a child who just didn't understand. I've always done what's best for you. I've always tried to look out for you. We were only asking for a little help with the wedding, and you turned your back on us. That's not love, honey. That's selfishness. I could hear the manipulation thick in her voice. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. "Mom," I said, forcing myself to stay calm, "I don't owe you anything. I don't owe you money. I don't owe you an apology. And I'm not going to keep sacrificing my happiness for your convenience. I'm done." And with that, I hung up. But the next move was theirs, and it was worse than I'd expected. That night, I received an email from my dad, a formal one. He claimed that I was being disrespectful and that my actions had undermined the family's unity. He also stated that I was no longer allowed to participate in any future family events, including the wedding, because family was about supporting one another. And then, the kicker, if you feel that strongly about being separate, we suggest you consider selling the house and moving out, since you no longer seem to want to be part of this family. I sat there for a moment, stunned. My own parents, people who I had given so much for, were now threatening me over their inability to accept that I wouldn't keep supporting their every whim. The audacity of it. It was infuriating. But I wasn't going to let them win. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I waited. Let them stew for a couple of days, let the anger build in them until they thought they had me cornered. And then came the phone calls. From Miles. From Camille. They started with the pleading, the guilt trips. "Miles just wants the wedding to be perfect," Camille said. "You don't want to ruin his happiness, do you?" I didn't answer her at first. I just sat there, biting my lip, trying to control the urge to scream. But then, Miles called. His tone was softer, but I could tell he was still trying to manipulate me, like he always did. "Ava, come on," he said, almost whining. "This is important. It's just a wedding. I'm asking for your help. Don't you want to be there for me? We're family." "No, Miles," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm not helping you with this. I'm not going to bail you out for something you should have planned for yourself." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "You're being unreasonable," he finally muttered. "No, I'm being honest," I said, cutting him off. "You don't understand what it's like to be constantly used. I've spent my life supporting you, and I'm done." The manipulation didn't end there, though. They started spreading lies about me to other family members, telling everyone that I was selfish and disrespectful. They even went so far as to claim I was cutting them out of my life for no reason. It was all part of their game, paint me as the villain, make everyone believe that I was the problem, that I was the one tearing the family apart. But I wasn't buying it. I knew they were doing everything they could to twist the narrative, to make me feel like the bad guy. But I wasn't going to let them control the story anymore. Not this time. After everything, I decided to take the final step. I went to a lawyer and had them draft a formal response to my parents' email, explaining that I wasn't going to be a part of their manipulative games anymore. I included the documents for the trust fund, emphasizing that it wasn't meant for them to dictate how it was used. I also made sure to legally secure the house in my name, just in case they tried any more underhanded tactics. I sent it all to them with no warning. The fallout was swift. My parents and Miles tried calling, but I didn't pick up. Instead, I left them to stew in the mess they created. A couple of weeks later, I got a text from Camille apologizing, of all people. She said she was disappointed in my parents and that she wished things could have been different. But I knew it was too little, too late. The damage was done, and I wasn't going to let them back into my life so easily. Things are quieter now. My parents tried to reach out a few more times, but I've kept my distance. I'm focusing on my own life, my career, and my peace of mind. I've stopped carrying their burdens, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm finally living for myself. As for Miles, well, he never did get the help he wanted for his wedding. He eventually figured things out on his own, but I'm not sure it was the grand affair he had hoped for. I don't regret my decision. I don't need to be anyone's backup anymore.